everybody, and welcome into the Mountaineers Now postgame show. And we are here to break down West Virginia and SMU, the first game of the Fort Myers tip-off. SMU coming away winners in this one, 70-58. I'm Schuyler, Callihan. That is Christopher Hall, and this game postgame show is brought to you by Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning. Take me home to comfort. And with that, let's take a look here at some of the numbers. Jesse Edwards led the Mountaineers with 18 points and 9 rebounds. He also had 3 blocks on the night. Quinn Slazinski got off to a fast start, but kind of fizzled out there as the game went on. He ended up going for 13 points and 3 assists on 5 of 13 from the field. And then for SMU, it was Zurich Phelps, 17 points on 8 of 20 shooting, 1 of 7 from 3, but he did add 12 rebounds. How about that? A guard getting 12 rebounds in this game. And then for the team statistics, West Virginia got to the line a heck of a lot more than SMU, but didn't really cash in. They went 61% from the free throw line, going 13 of 21. And they did win the rebounding edge 39-33. But the biggest difference, and I think maybe one of the biggest factors of this game, was the turnovers. West Virginia, 16 turnovers, Chris. I mean, this is something that we kind of pointed out as kind of a little bit of a surprise in the first couple of games, even against lesser competition, that they were doing a pretty good job of taking care of the basketball for a team that hadn't played a lot together, a team that was very thin on depth in terms of their depth. They were doing a good job keeping it under double digits. Not so much tonight.
Yeah, and some of it's just trying to force things. I think a lot of them, I think most of them did come in the first half. I believe they had 10 in the first half, and a lot of them were just silly mistakes. But you can take those mistakes when they were scoring the way they were moving the ball well, they were feeding Jesse underneath. Would like to see Quinn get more involved. I think he had 8 points there in the first 3 minutes. But you got to credit SMU. They knew West Virginia going into the game had 7 scholarship players. So from the start of the game, they just sped them up. Don't know really what you can do if you're Eiler. They work on it, but how much can you practice full court press with a short roster like that? So they're struggling. They obviously don't have a true point guard. They only got Kobe and Seth bringing up the ball. I thought they schemed it well to get it inbounds, but they obviously had trouble a few times getting it inbounds. And that's just kind of where West Virginia is right now. They're just really shorthanded, and they managed an 11-point lead. But I mean, if you didn't know, you should have known. Like it was coming. You could tell they were tired early in the first half for how much they had to run up and down the floor. I think something that they may have to look into really, because West Virginia was getting open looks in the transition. They were beating SMU down the floor, but at what cost at the end of the day? I mean, they were just beat. I mean, you could tell they were beat in the end of the first half, which they could. I think they only had 1 timeout in the final 12 minutes. So really, it just came down to fatigue. Take care of the ball better in the first half. Maybe you can get a little bit larger advantage and kind of get them out of the game. But that's an SMU squad that they've been a pretty decent program over the last decade or so, and not scared to go up against someone like West Virginia. And that's a talented team. I think they took A&M to the final moments. I think it was 6 days ago. So it's not a bad loss, but it's a frustrating loss because you see the potential of this team. I mean, he went up 11 at half. The top end talent's great. Edwards, Lazinski, absolutely phenomenal. But when you can't get those guys rest and you can't get your guards rest, you see a lot of standing around the second half, a lot of short shots, a lot of overcompensating because they're tired, and just second half was just bad all around.
So NCAA, get on your crap. Get Raekwon Battle on this dang team and allow him to play. I mean, we've seen a couple of guys get their waiver. What's the word I'm looking for? Approved. That were 2-time transfers. Actually, a couple of them went through today. So who knows? I mean, I think at some point, obviously within probably the next couple of weeks, we'll hear something in terms of what that decision will be from the NCAA. But I don't know how much of a difference. I mean, it's going to make a difference if Raekwon is able to play for sure. It gives him another body, number one. And number two, it gives him a very good quality player that's going to be in the starting lineup. So it's definitely going to help. But is it something that was going to get this team to an NCAA tournament bit. I don't know about that. That's a far stretch, especially with how many other holes that this team really has, particularly in the front court behind Jesse Edwards is really nobody. But back to this game, West Virginia's up 36-25 at the half, and then they get outscored in the second half 45-22. We talked a lot about the depth and the fatigue, all of that stuff. But where do you feel like that fatigue really set in? Was it the defensive end and the transition, or was it so much even more on the offense and just not being having their legs underneath them on their shots?
I would like to blame transition on fatigue, but they
Yeah,
haven't guarded transition very well all year. They struggled even at the beginning of the game. Really, it's so simple that SMU hit some tough shots. When you see one guy hit tough shots, other ones do. Ricardo Wright had the best game of I think his career probably, but definitely the best game of his season. He went 4-4 in the second half from 3-point range. And they just kind of credit to SMU. They figured out the 2-3 zone a little bit. And when you kind of figure out the 2-3 zone, you can shoot over top of it and get open looks. And yep, some of that was fatigue where they just couldn't get over quick enough, but they were hitting shots. And West Virginia just couldn't kind of adjust to what SMU was doing defensively. They hit him with the zone as well, and you saw a lot of guys standing around, and I think Jesse Edward he had 5 turnovers, and some of those were just SMU crashing down on him. He's got to when he sees it, he's got to recognize it and just kind of touch pass it to a guard on the outside. I mean, one of those turnovers, I think they called a foul for SMU. Players crashed down on them, so that leaves a lot of guys open along the perimeter. So still some of the same struggles you saw at the beginning of the year, even with lesser competition. The guards aren't I don't feel like they're doing a good enough job getting open off the ball. There's just a lot of standing around along the perimeter. So when Jesse gets the ball, you can cut towards the paint. They're going to have to keep honest. But if you're just standing outside and they crash down quick enough, and if Jesse, his first instinct is to turn to shoot. Um, Again, some of it's a tough ask, but if you notice it, you just got to try to get it out as quick as you can. So there's some adjustment, but so much of it, to me, this game right here just chalks up to fatigue because you couldn't make anything. They shot 25% in the second half. Saw less driving to the basket and more settling for shots. And again, I just think they were so tired, and it's a shame because again, you just have such good players in that starting lineup that can all score, and when they've got legs, they show they can score. They show they can get open. So I think we're just going to have to kind of suck this up. It's painful to watch. Sucks for these kids that are playing hard. They played hard really that whole game. And I mean, what can you do when they're playing 34 and 36, 34, 33, 31 minutes? I
yeah.
mean, what else can you do? I know we talked about Ikuk, but it's hard to imagine him coming back. So even getting maybe, you're getting Carissa back and 5 more games. You guys said 5 more games. So after that, maybe you get a battle, but like you said, it doesn't help your front court at all. Assuming that's still a liability on defense, and he did get a bucket driving to the paint, but he was also going away from the basket. So he's not, he's definitely still a big project if he wanted to play significant minutes, but I don't know what else you can do at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's really the frustrating thing, probably for Josh Schuyler, is I mean he sees that this there's probably going to be a theme where you're going to see West Virginia play extremely well in the first half, maybe the first 25, 30 minutes of the game, and then it's going to get to that point where hands are going on heads or on their knees, and it's just a lot of fatigue setting in, and that's the frustrating part because you can see that the core of this team is good enough to win a bunch of games, but you need a couple of extra bodies just to get some rest, and you're just not going to be able to have that. And you also too have to think like these guys that are in the starting lineup outside of Quinn Slazinski and Jesse. I mean, these are guys that are relatively inexperienced at the college level. And the way I kind of look at it is look at Keedy Johnson, right? When he first came in, he did a really good job kind of in his role and kind of took a back seat. He kind of sat there for a year, didn't really have much of a role, stepped into more of a role in year 2. And then by year 3, he was really a complete player. And that just kind of shows you. And that was a kid that had junior college experience. I mean, we're talking about a kid that they plucked from Israel over the summer is in the starting 5. So if it took a kid that played some junior college ball and was one of the leading scorers in the nation at that level, if it took him 3 years to kind of completely get going, just imagine what it's like for some of these other guys in this roster, like a Josiah Harris, who again really didn't play a whole lot last year. Kobe Johnson, didn't play a whole lot. Seth Wilson was more of in a specialized role. So that's a really tough deal, I think, for this team is that they're relying on Jesse Edwards and Quinn Slazinski to kind of carry them every night. They need a third person to emerge. I don't know if that person is going to emerge until Kirk Creasy comes back.
Yeah, and you'd like to see a better game from Seth Wilson. He just hasn't been that reliable scorer. He hasn't really been able to score off the bounce. He hits a couple buckets here and there, but they really need more production out of him. But I think, so early in his career, you're asking him maybe to do too much. He doesn't really, we've seen little guards be able to score, drive into the basket. He can at times, again, but I need to find some consistency. He plays a little out of control at times. Kobe's not. I know he had 19 points previous game, but he's not going to be that option for you. So yeah, maybe when Kerr gets back. But again, I think we're going to beat this to the horse. You just have no help in the front court. Getting 36 minutes. I think Jesse played. If he didn't, he played pretty close to all 20 minutes in the second half. Just checking here. Of course, he can't play. Yeah, he played all 20 minutes in the second half. Seth Wilson played 19. Quinn played 18. So
I
it's
don't think
just
people realize how difficult that is.
that's extremely difficult. And as hard as they were playing in that first half, I mean, they were gassed. They were
Yeah.
just gassed by halftime. So kind of you could see it coming. I think this is kind of going to be the storyline for probably most of the season. Again, SMU's a good team, but they're not going to be big. They're not Big 12 teams, so it's only going to get even harder. So I don't really know
Yeah.
what you do with it. I mean, if you're out, what do you do? I guess their only, I think, option to save legs is do not run out in transition. Just play half
Slow it
court.
down.
I mean, you can't just continue to run. So I
And
know it's hard. It's hard because these kids are getting looks. But when it comes second half and you're kind of just forced because you're so tired to play half court, they're just settling for shots because they just don't have the legs, and then they don't have the legs to get it up over the rim. It's just pick your poison, I guess, and hope for the best.
I mean, at least you think you have a little bit of a matchup tomorrow night that it'll kind of cater to the depth issues and the fatigue because Virginia's going to slow it down. They're going to play defense. They're going to go in their half court sets, and they're really not a team that likes to push the ball in transition and get up and down the floor. So this is probably, even though Virginia's a very good team, they're ranked 24th in the country, but this is probably a really good opportunity for them to kind of bounce back. Like Josh Schuyler said, I think last week, he would be more concerned if they had to play Virginia or Wisconsin first and then have SMU the very next day. But I mean, who knows? I think if you somehow come away with a win here, I mean, it's hard to think that they do, but if they do come away with a win against Virginia and you go 1-1 in Fort Myers, you have to be elated with that result. Again, considering the depth issues that they have, and then you've got a few days to rest here before you come back home and play Bellarmine. So going 1-1 is great, even if you compete in this game against Virginia. I know it sounds like we're having that defeatist kind of talk here, but I mean, even if you compete in this game against Virginia, that's got to be somewhat of a confidence booster.
Yeah, again, I don't know how they're going to legs, even with Virginia. They're going to make you work so hard to get open off the ball.
That is true. That is a good point.
It's going to be a battle. They had a rough shooting night. See if that carries over to Wednesday. I
First
mean,
to
that's really
40 wins
I
this
don't
game,
know what else.
baby.
I don't even know what else to say. It's hard. It's a
Look,
hard
look,
watch because you can see so much potential, but it's just what do you do? I mean, there's just I don't know what answers they could possibly come up with at this point other than just completely walking the ball up the floor every time and just
hold it
running a
for
good
one
play
second
for a
and
good 10
boop.
run a good play for 10 seconds and hopefully you can stop the ball and keep the other team from running. I mean, that's every team's going to have full court press them, at least play full court man,
He'd be crazy not to.
just to make them work the ball up and speed them up on the offensive end. So, see if Virginia does that. It'll be interesting to see if they kind of apply some at least three-quarter court pressure.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a team that isn't used to doing that or maybe not necessarily comfortable doing with it, I mean, why not? I mean, it's going to tire this team out. So, um, but yeah, I mean, this is going to be a game where it might be the first to 40 or 45 to win. I mean, I don't think you can set this total low enough. I mean, is it going to get over 100? I mean,
Virginia might. There's a good chance they're going to get really good looks in the second half. So
yeah.
I wouldn't. If you're trying to bet on this team, I would stay away.
I
I
mean,
would
I've been
hit.
living with the under, so
I
and
would
it's been
just
working.
stay away.
So West Virginia and Virginia, they'll take on each other tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the consolation game here, the Fort Myers tip off. We'll have the coverage for you here on Mountaineers Now, and we'll have the post game show following the action. And you can catch that on YouTube at Mountaineers Now, and you can subscribe there. Follow us on X at the same handle. And that'll do it for us here tonight. So thank you guys for watching. For Christopher Hall, I'm Schuyler Callihan. You've been watching the Mountaineers Now post-game show presented by Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning. Take me home to comfort. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow night.